According to a new working paper from the Federal Reserve, hey, where are you going? Listeners, get back here. As I was saying, a new working paper from the Federal Reserve looked into the role that credit scores have in predicting the stability and potential longevity of a relationship. Yes, that's right. Your credit scores are like a love score. Bro, explain.
Okay, so your credit score, of course, is based on your credit worthiness, amount of debt you have, your ability to pay back your debt, whether you've had foreclosures or bankruptcies. And there are the findings of that paper as summarized by Bloomberg. So first of all, people with higher credit scores are more likely to be in a committed relationship and stay together longer. People tend to form relationships with people who have similar credit scores. And the strength of the match, both in terms of the score and the details, is predictive of whether they will break up in the future. And one thing I thought was perhaps the most interesting is that they found that it implies just some overall trustworthiness about the person. So it often predicted whether someone broke up over something that had nothing to do with money. It's just whether that person was a responsible person or not.
When I first read the headline, it was like, oh, your credit score and your ability to be happy in a relationship is, correlated or whatever. And of course, my first response was like, what? But then when you actually think about it, it's like, yeah, if you're a more trustworthy person with your money, chances are you're a more trustworthy person with like not cheating on your spouse and other stuff like that. Sean, what do you think of it?
Yeah, no, I think we see this all the time in the financial advisory. I mean, in fact, when I was in practice, this was a criterion factor. I wouldn't work with you unless you had a good credit score. No, I'm kidding. That's not true. But it's generally true that if you have a good credit score and your spouse has a good credit score, you actually have similar financial mindedness. You're more willing to think about money in the same way, and so it leads to good outcomes. So although it might not be exactly causative, it definitely is correlative.
When I think about finance, I often think about people's abilities to accurately predict consequences. Right, I'm going to buy this thing, I'm going to put it on my credit card, but I'm predicting that I'm going to be able to pay it off. I appreciate the consequences. And I think about that with relationships as well. Are you making decisions today that are just because you want to do it and it's going to make you feel good? Are you taking into account the effect it's going to have down the road? And I think it's a similar mindset.
So what is someone supposed to do with this information aside from emailing it to your daughter if you don't like her boyfriend?
I think I mentioned this beforehand. My wife and I used to talk about deal breakers when you date someone. And for me, it would have been used to be heavy drug use or things like that, which I'm still not a big fan of, by the way. But when I was younger, I would have never considered someone's financial habits in terms of choosing a spouse. But now, now that I've grown up, I would totally tell my kids about this. This is crucial. You have to, I don't know if you're going to ask someone for their credit score when you meet them at the bar, but it's crucial to having a successful relationship.
Yeah, I think you have to get comfortable with the fact that you should talk about something that is usually very personal, because even if you're not willing to get to a point where you have to have the same, I have to have a 700 score for my partner to be a good partner, but you have to realize that your score will impact them or vice versa. So if you have a low score and you go into a relationship with someone with a high score, one of you is going to give and either is going to adjust and have a low score as well, or the other one's going to adjust and have a higher score. So you just need to realize the impact that has and talk about it openly.
Yeah, it's changing habits, but it's also, one of the things they talked about was if you have a high score and you marry someone with a low score and then you try to get a mortgage, it might become more difficult now because of that other person, and that causes tension in the relationship.
Do you know your girlfriend's score, Sean?
I don't. No, I'm just thinking about it.
You guys just moved in together.
I know.
And you haven't had this very important chat?
I think I'm going to have to kick myself out until I find out the score.
Maybe just email her after the show. Hey, babe. So what's your credit score? And if she's like, I don't know, you can be like, oh
yeah, that's
she doesn't
bad.
even know her credit score.
Yeah. I'm going to find out now, though.
Yeah?
Yeah, all because of this.
When you and Ron were dating, was money on your mind? Were those considerations?
Money was not on my mind. I had a pretty good nest egg coming into the relationship, and Ron was a little bit in debt because of some previous things that bad decisions he'd made. Not necessarily bad decisions, but he took time off to try and start a business with some friends and was putting a lot of money on credit cards because of trying to get a business up and going. Anyway, short story long. So Ron actually, before we got married, he said, this is all my debt, and I'm going to pay off all of my debt before we combine our money. And so when I married him, he had it, but we didn't actually combine the bank accounts until he had paid it all off and we were on equal footing.
We had a similar situation when I was dating my wife. She wasn't so much in debt. She was just much more comfortable with a low balance in her bank account.
Which must have killed you.
It came to like decisions like, hey, let's go to Europe. And I don't want to go to Europe. And back then I thought, well, it didn't really matter so much. Mm-hmm. And I had those thoughts, well, she'll change. And you never go into a relationship with that. But the thing is, she did change. Like, we have met much more in the middle. And we might talk a little later about changing habits. But if that's one thing I would say to my kids, like, don't go into a relationship thinking you're going to change somebody. But in my situation, it did. So it's a little tricky.
So does this mean that your wife is better with money and you're now more fun to hang out with?
I have loosened up what I am comfortable spending. How about that?
So spur of the moment trips to Europe?
Well, yeah, we did go to Europe a couple of summers ago. Took a little getting used to, but yes, maybe I am much more comfortable with spontaneous purchases than I probably would have been when we first started dating.
Are you much more comfortable, or are you just accepting of?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both, yeah.
You still sound like a really awful person to go to the mall with. No fun.
And not because of this, just generally.
Just
generally, the personal hygiene, it's all very unpleasant.
Yeah, I saw your Halloween costume.